Now you look at the camera.
Yeah,
No, okay,
just for
ready?
the introduction.
Do we look at the camera?
Ready? Just for the intro. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Marvin, take us away.
Welcome to the L&T podcast. It's a lifestyle. Today, we're lucky to be joined by a special guest. We have an exceptional yoga and meditation teacher or instructor. Someone who's learned a lot and gained a lot of knowledge throughout her years of experience on the topics of yoga, meditation, but also physical and mental well-being as a general topic. And hopefully the listeners, including Robin and I, can learn something today from Namoa. So welcome. We're so happy to have you here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. That was a lovely introduction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, he's the next one. I just say here.
That's all I've got planned for today.
You're just going to sit and be quiet now, are you?
I let Marvin take it away. I just look at the camera. I'm like, yeah, he's doing such a good job.
Okay, Robin, you take over now.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Simple, Namoa. Just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your background and yoga and meditation and how you got into all that.
Okay. Well, that's a long story. I guess I've been practicing yoga for the last 12, 13 years. And it's a practice that I came across when I was going through a really hard time in my life, when I was in my early 20s. I was lucky at the time to be able to go away and do some traveling just as part of kind of my process to heal. I'd lost my mum and my family had kind of been through a lot. And that kind of generated this trauma response in me. And I kind of didn't really know how to cope with like what I was experiencing like emotionally. And I took some time away from university. I was kind of halfway through my degree at the time just because, my life had just changed so much and I really needed to just take some time and go and look after myself.
And how old were you, at that time?
I was 20 when I lost my mum.
Wow.
But I was 22 when I went off and went on this trip. So I'd already been trying to kind of to deal with everything for a couple of years. And I found that nothing that I was doing was really helping me. I was just stuck in this quite a dark place. So I went on this big trip to Southeast Asia and I just went backpacking for 6 months. Didn't really have a plan. I just let myself go and kind of be curious and explore. And I think that was what I really needed. I needed a bit of lightness because my life had been really just heavy for quite a long time. But on this trip, I was just lucky to meet a person, this wonderful woman who recommended a yoga retreat center. And we met each other for a day. It was just like one of those connections that you have in passing. Like we were in a cafe and we were both foreigners, so we started talking. And I didn't say anything about what I'd been through over the last couple of years, but when we went to say goodbye, she was like, oh, if you're ever in Cambodia, there's this yoga retreat center that I've just been to, and I think it's somewhere that you need to go. And I kind of didn't think anything of it, and I didn't plan to go to Cambodia. And then I ended up in Cambodia a couple of months later, and it just that came into my mind. And so I looked up the center. And I went and I stayed for almost a month and just learnt all about yoga. So, so that was kind of my first introduction to it. And while I was at that centre, I just felt this connection back to myself. I'd felt very disconnected from myself because I think when you go through something traumatic, you're in survival mode and you're just trying to like get through life day to day. So I'd kind of disconnected a lot from myself and I disconnected from my feelings.
Yeah.
And during that time at this yoga center, things shifted for me. And when I left, I felt just so much lighter and so much calmer and so much more within my own body again and like connected with who I had been before. So that kind of started my journey with yoga. And just having that experience and feeling that change in me over such a short time, it just kind of solidified to me that that was a practice that I would keep coming back to over the years. So yeah, I kind of like would practice for a bit and then like life would get busy and I'd go away and I probably wouldn't do yoga for months, and then something really hard would happen, like I'd go through a breakup or like I'd be really stressed, and then I'd find myself just naturally coming back to yoga and meditation and to the breathing and all the little practices that are a part of yoga, and that would help me to kind of, again, come back to myself and to deal with whatever I was going through. So yeah, I kind of had a very non-committal relationship with yoga for many years. And then eventually I was like, okay, this is silly. Like I need to actually integrate it properly because I know that it works for me, but I'm choosing just to like reach for it when I need it rather than have it as more of a daily practice so that things just kind of feel easier because I'm supporting myself better day to day. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think especially you mentioned like when I think about when I was in my early 20s, it's a time you're already like you're trying to find yourself. You know, you still haven't found yourself. You don't know exactly sometimes where you're going to end up and stuff. And when something traumatic like for you happened, it must have been all just very overwhelming. So it's very interesting that you did find yoga and then somehow it helped you through particular techniques and stuff like that.
yeah.
So that's really, really interesting to hear. For the people who don't know or are very, you know, everyone has heard of yoga in some form, but I feel like there's so many misconceptions about the term in terms of.
I think people just look at it as stretching.
But
there's so much more to it, right?
Some people say it's stretching and mobility. I used to say that, for example. So I don't know much about it.
Had you done it before?
No, I hadn't.
No, apologies. Excuse me.
Disrespecting your discipline like this. So it's only been 10 minutes into the podcast.
I mean, that's definitely one way to describe it for sure.
Yeah, and in other ways, some of my clients, I tell them or I ask them about that. The first thing they'll say is just like, oh no, it's too slow for me. I can't do that. I'm not patient enough or something. There's a lot of misconceptions about that. And I understand, I know there's so many different types of yoga and stuff. So yeah, how would you? No, it's very difficult to sum up. But how would you describe it in terms of physically what yoga is, and also the benefits that you could have, especially in the traumatic experiences that you went through? Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. There's so many sides to this question. But
yeah, totally.
In basic terms.
I think the biggest thing is that what people think of as yoga is, like you say, just the physical practice. So what people see online, on Instagram, or maybe going to a class, for example, is the focus on the physical side.
Yeah.
And that's just one tiny little part of what kind of the bigger concept of yoga is. But it is a really important part because I think for lots of people, it's so important to kind of have something to bring them into the practice. And for lots of us, the way that we live at the moment is that, you know, our physical health is kind of touted as the most important aspect of our health. So for people to be able to, you know, see yoga for the physical side of it and to want to come into it that way is a really cool thing. But yoga it's kind of this all-encompassing lifestyle and philosophy and experience. So you've got the physical movement, then you've got the breath work or the pranayama, you've got the meditation and the mindfulness aspect of it, and then there's a whole lot more to it, which goes into the philosophy and like kind of that spiritual element of it as well, which, you know, some people connect with that and some people don't. But I think the three biggest things for me when it comes to yoga is, the breath, is the mind / your emotions, and then the physical element of it. So typically when you go to a yoga practice, for example, you'll connect with those different elements, and together they work to, I guess, create or generate an experience inside so that when you leave that practice or leave that class, you probably, do feel, more relaxed or calmer or grounded, depending on what kind of class you're going to. And like you say, there are so many different kinds of yoga.
Yeah.
I tend to teach vinyasa or vinyasa flow, which is a faster pace class. You're moving and you're breathing together in a sequence. So your breath is really focused as a part of the practice. And I think because you're really utilizing your breath while you move, when you leave, you do feel a lot calmer and more peaceful because you've kind of been regulating your nervous system in a way. There are so many types of yoga. There's hatha, which is more traditional, slower yoga. There's yin, which I think lots of people are starting to explore because that's holding poses for longer periods of time and it's super restorative. And I think yin is something lots of people are exploring at the moment because so many people are stressed. And so you're holding these poses, you're breathing, you're fully relaxing, and at the end of it, lots of people fall asleep. So
Wow, that's cool.
It's really nice for stress management. So many different practices. There are some really strong practices too, like Ashtanga, which is a sequence you do the same every single time in class. It's quite a powerful form of yoga. So there is something for everyone, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What makes a because I've done a little bit of yoga, but I've resonated with different instructors. So what makes a good instructor, and how could somebody, because I'd hate for someone to try it and think, nah, it's not for me, but they've only tried it once, and it may have just been the person that was presenting that class. So
totally.
And this is for me personally as well, and hopefully other people can resonate, but what makes a good instructor, or how do we hunt for a good instructor that we could connect with? Are there any sort of telltale signs or something to look for?
Such a good question. And I think it's so hard because everyone's so different and everyone is wanting something different from their practice or, relates to things differently. I know that I find with people who come to my classes, I think the most important thing that I try to do is to read the room, is to really get a feel for the types of people who are in my class and to give them something that they can relate to or connect with. And I guess it's just a process of trying different teachers and different classes, and all teachers present things really differently, and they've done different trainings and they have different life experience as well. So they're all putting that into what they're teaching you, right? So it is really hard to find a good teacher or to find a class that you respond to. I think it always just comes down to having to try different places and different teachers and find what works for you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because it just reminded me of Ellie, my wife, and it's the same. The instructor will make or break the session for her sometimes, and she'll come back and complete zen and peace some days, and then the other morning she'll come back and she's like, no, it just didn't fit well with her, And I think it does come down to the personality as well.
And I think
it's interesting.
I think a big part of that is everyone comes to a class or a practice for a different reason. And if the teacher can give you that, then that's the relationship formed, right? You'll go back to them. And I know that in my classes, because of how I've used yoga in my own life to support mental health and emotional health and to help with that healing process, I put that into my classes. So I think the students or the people who come to my classes and they choose to come back, it's probably because they can relate to what I'm saying and what I'm giving, and they're probably going through something similar, or they've gone through something similar, or they're wanting to feel supported in that way. So in the mental, the emotional, or the physical kind of health side of it. So,
And so that's for the vinyasa style that you're taking?
I put that into all my classes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the beautiful thing about, the beautiful thing about yoga, I think, is that, you have all these different styles, but ultimately, the teacher will just create a unique experience regardless of what style it is, based on, their experience, what they're wanting to share with you, how they're hoping to create this experience,
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys need to come to a yoga class.
Definitely need to do it. Yeah.
And then I think what I'm saying will land. Like I think it's so hard to describe an experience, because it's there's so much to it. But once you get to actually do it yourself and to feel it, and then you kind of start to understand and
the stuff that you teach, is it like, let's just say if me and Marvin are attending your class and like we're stressors as an example, we're pretty chill, but let's just say are there things that people end up taking home from your class that they could adapt to their own lifestyle? So when they feel like, let's just say they got a deadline to meet at work, or they feel they're very pressured from their sport, is there something like breath work or sort of, I don't know, guided meditation? Is there stuff that you
definitely
can sort of give to people? Okay, what does that sort of look like?
Well, we always say that the time on your mat in the class is your time to kind of practice and to experience and to explore different different practices there, so that when you leave, you can take that with you, and you take what works for you, and you have the opportunity to implement that into your day-to-day life, and then you kind of leave behind whatever doesn't resonate or doesn't work for you. So I think it's always like the meditation, mindfulness aspect of yoga, and then the breath work that are the tools that most people take away with them. A lot of the time in a class, like you might not sit and do a meditation, but the practice of mindfulness, so moving your body with awareness and moving as fast or as slow as is best for you, but with that like full embodiment and full experience or connection to the experience, like that is practicing mindfulness. And when we're practicing mindfulness and we're really present in the current moment, we're then starting to disconnect from all the busyness or those intrusive thoughts that we have in our minds all the time. And so I think even just that practice in itself gives people a little bit of space or a little bit of quiet within their mind, so that, when you come out of that mindfulness and you come back into the mind, you're already kind of like, I stopped thinking for a moment. Like I stopped worrying, or I stopped running that script through my mind, which feels really stressful, and then, triggers the stress hormones in my body, which then trigger my nervous system and make my body feel stressed. Like I've had a bit of a break from that already, and you notice the difference. So in yoga, we're always practicing mindfulness through movement, through breath.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the way you said it. I think a lot of people, especially with guys and some of the clients I've come across who have gone to yoga, have gone initially for the sake of mobility or the physical aspect, and they've stayed for the benefits of the mindfulness that they may have not been aware of, that it wasn't their main intention or target, and that the mental health and the mindfulness part of that comes with yoga it kind of enlightens them and makes them want to stay, and that's when they learn that it's a little bit more than just that.
And that's so lovely to see, because again, I think the physical side of it is always the draw card for people. And then once they're there and they have those other experiences, that's what changes them. That's what keeps them wanting to practice, and it flows into all these other sides of their health as well. It's not just that they feel, better in their bodies, like overall in their day-to-day lives, they're starting to feel better too, because maybe they've realized within the class that they don't actually breathe properly. Lots of us breathe so high up in our chests, when we're stressed, and we breathe really quickly, and we're not breathing slow and, deep into the body. And so we're just constantly in this state of stress purely because we're not breathing right. And so having that element of, okay, let's sit and we'll breathe mindfully, for a couple of minutes at the start. We'll start to move, and then we'll keep coming back to that mindful breathing. That's the practice of learning how to breathe better in that class. And then when you're out in the world, you start to notice, oh, I'm feeling stressed. Am I breathing properly? Oh, no, I'm not. I'll just slow my breath down for a moment and then that will calm everything, And so it's giving people the control back to regulate themselves better, just because you're practicing those skills and you're bringing that awareness into yourself.
And it's well documented. There's a lot of science behind the breathing and slowing down and controlling your breathing, like you mentioned earlier with the nervous system. It just activates your parasympathetic nervous system and gets you nice and calm, as opposed to being on fight or flight mode the whole time.
Totally.
But it's interesting. Earlier on, you mentioned people tend to look at health and the first thing you think about is your physical health. Why do you think that is? Like, why is always, almost the gold standard, or the first time people think about health, it's just the physical aspect before the mental, the spiritual, or social?
Honestly, and this is just my opinion, but I think like back in the day, I don't think that was our focus. I think, when you look at collectivist cultures, when you look at like, Māori culture or Pacific culture or tribal cultures around the world, like their view of health and well-being is like, your soul, your emotions, your connections with other people. It's so holistic. And I think the focus on physical health probably just developed, with consumerism. It's a way for companies to make money. It's the way that our society kind of was molded, to set these standards for ourselves. Yeah. And so I think that's a big part of it. But I do think people are, we've seen all these changes over the years where people are coming back to that more holistic, broader sense of health. But I really do think, this focus on physical health, it's to do with, big companies making money or, just the health industry for a long time. The medical system, for example, they look at the physical body first and we're having these, shifts towards more holistic ways of viewing health. And I just think it's,
Yeah, it's a good point. It's really nice that you brought it up in terms of you went back to like historically, it wasn't that be all end all, it's a more of a holistic approach to health. But you mentioned consumerism and things like that. And it's so true because it sells because you can see it.
Yeah, totally.
And it's there. And because you can see before and after or whatever, and look at this person, they look like this because they did that. There. And it sells more, right? As opposed to mental health, it's more invisible, right? Yeah. And it's more harder to target for consumerism, for marketing. So it's really, really interesting.
But getting a lot of companies that push like their product, right? So like, have you ever seen the fat freezing for the midsection?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I'm just like, come on now. Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure how the technology works, but it's meant to like slow down like fat cell production. And then your body is meant to regulate like a natural thermogenesis, like heating up and then get rid of the
brown fat cells. And
but $3,000 is a pop, like talking about consumerism. Well, what about if it's like all up here, like, if it's one's mindset, or maybe they don't feel like they have connection with their own family, like
totally
that could actually be leading to everything that's spiraling them out of control, but then looking for that quick fix.
Yeah, that's right. And I think people will always, they'll always reach for the answer first with the physical body because that's just how, human beings, we're very like visual. And, when it comes to relationships, for example, like when we, if you're single and you see someone that's attractive to you, like it's always the visual element first. And so I think, in our culture, we put a lot of emphasis onto how we look because in a way that ensures our survival, right? We want to fit in. We want to be accepted by other people. There's a societal pressure to look a certain way in some industries, and that just means that, you're likely to be okay. Whereas if you look different, then there's more likely that you won't fit in and you won't, have the same things that other people have. So I think all of that has kind of developed from that fear we all have inside of being rejected and not fitting in. And so, yeah, the kind of consumerist side to that, and having, such a focus on physical health, just kind of blossomed from that because the opportunity was there,
So you met my two daughters before. So a question for their older selves, because particularly my eldest one, is that, have you ever worked with particularly more like females that will go to extreme natures of like personality change or even like poor food behavior because they don't feel good, and then they start to be discouraged because they have that disconnect, like might be a little bit overweight or whatever it may be.
Totally.
Have you ever worked with
myself?
Oh yes, yeah.
I mean, I'd say a lot of women. I mean, lots of people have those fears, right? And but definitely myself, like when I was a teenager, I struggled with that a lot. And I think, it's so complex and it's so challenging because once you hold a belief that, you're not worthy or you're not good enough just for how you are.
Is this what you were telling yourself, like through your teens?
Yeah, and I've had lots of these conversations with like girlfriends of mine, and I think it's a very common belief for lots of us. Because you do grow up, seeing, a certain type of way of being as the ideal. We see it. Well, back in the day, there was no social media for me, but it's like you'd read magazines or you'd see it in like the music videos or the shops. Like there was a certain way of being, right? Yeah. Which was idolized, and you got this idea that if I'm not like that, then I'm not good enough. And again, I won't be accepted. Like no one will like me. I won't have friends. Yeah. I won't succeed. Oh. And so that tiny little belief is kind of the first step towards you then abandoning yourself in a way and changing yourself to try and meet that ideal and to fit in, and whatever that looks like. I mean, for me, it was I had an unhealthy relationship with food and exercise, partly as a way of like dealing with stress, but also because I didn't feel good enough as I was. Like changing aspects of your personality to fit in, like all of these things, which are so damaging for yourself. I think it's a very, very common experience, and something that, again, yoga, for example, was part of my healing process to bring me back to myself, because it kind of, with time, just made me realize, that I am good enough how I am. Like when I feel grounded in my body and I start to disconnect from all of those thoughts in my head which are telling me I'm not good enough, I can kind of see myself more clearly, and I can see those thoughts as just thoughts and thoughts that aren't even real. Like it's just what I have believed because I saw some things in the world around me and I attached a meaning to that, and then I created this belief about myself.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a real power in being present, right?
Totally.
And I think it sounds like that yoga helps you be in the moment. And it just reminded me of that book, Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and just being present in that moment. And sometimes, like you said, you're not focusing on your breathing or anything like that, but when you're in there and having to think about it, you're just being in that moment, right? Totally. You're not thinking about anything in the past or the future, because all you really have is now.
Totally,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. I think it's when you think about social status, like you mentioned in your teens, whenever you think about it, you only think about material goods and your physical self. You don't think about, like when I think about someone's social status, you don't think about what's their mental health like.
Yeah.
Or are they being, are they expressing gratitude, or what's their mindfulness level like? You always think about materials, how, their wealth, and also their physical well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Are they sincerely happy, right?
Right, exactly. But when you're younger, social status is a big thing when you're trying to find yourself and trying to find yourself in society. Those are the things that spark up. Like, I need to get this, I need to get these materials, and I need to look like a certain way.
Man, even the clothing, I remember for myself was like, just like I wanted like the Nike jumper.
Yeah.
Because everyone else had one, or
but
I wanted
your biceps were too big, so you had to. Is that
I need to wear big puffer jackets.
That's a different issue, Robin. We're talking about something different.
I was like,
So
big
true
puffer
though.
jacket.
It's so annoying
So,
because
so the labels,
Yeah.
even like the latest push bike, like
Yeah.
there was just, so many things.
it is, yeah.
But
And if you can't have those things, then again, like you feel inadequate and
Yeah.
you worry that people will judge you
Yeah.
because you don't have the same as everyone else. And
how long did you sort of like, from the teens and being able to get to the other side, how long did it take? And are there like sort of 2-3 strategies you could share that potentially if a young lady
yeah.
is listening, like she could resonate and even maybe just contact you and even come to your
Yeah.
yoga sessions and really like get through it? Because my main concern is like to all the young ladies, like, man, you are special, you are needed, you are loved. So whatever the story is, like disregard it and probably,
Yeah.
build yourself up again. So
Yeah. It's so, so important to find ways to pull yourself out of that headspace because, you can live there for a very long time. And I know for me, I think it took me a lot longer to get out of that because like I lost my mum at a really important time in my life, like that transition from being a teenager into an adult. And like we have a really small family on my mum's side. So my sister and I, we were purely raised by our mum. And she had kind of already lost her parents and her brother by the time we were both born. So it was just our mum. And then my dad has a huge family, but he was living in another country when we were growing up. So we kind of didn't have that extra family support. So losing my mum when I did just meant that I was kind of in it alone for a long time. Like I think if I'd had guidance there or like a parent there to see what I was going through, I would have pulled out of it a lot quicker. But in the end, I kind of realized, you're the only person who can help yourself at the end of the day. Like regardless of how many people you have in your life, like it's always up to you to choose something different for yourself and then to like find the way out of that and to put in the work to kind of to get out of that. So I think like for me, I started to kind of find mentors. Like I knew that I wasn't happy the way that I was living, and I knew that there were women out there who lived a life that I really aspired to because they seemed happy and they were like living a life that was full of purpose and like really meaningful to them. So I actually started to like seek out mentors. And so I got some really amazing like female mentors who were like working in business or they were working in the health industry or they were in like the yoga world or they were just doing really cool things. And I got really good support from them. And then, like I said, coming back to these yoga practices were really helpful for me because that allowed me to develop a better relationship with myself than the one that I had at the time. Yeah. And I think as well, part of it is just getting older too. As you get older, you realize the things that you thought were important actually aren't. So having the right clothes and like looking a certain way and like having a guy think that you're pretty or all of those things, aren't important. But it's, that just comes with time and experience sometimes as well. But I'd say, the most important thing is just having to like really develop a good, healthy, loving relationship with yourself. Like that's the one thing that will kind of pull you through anything. Because if you know you can rely on yourself to fulfill your needs and to care for yourself and to back yourself, like then everything else kind of is okay.
Yep.
And
is that where the mental fortitude from the yoga practice you find really helps build that resilience and alters one's mindset?
Because I think as well, a great part of yoga is the practice. It's like having to consistently show up for yourselves, right? And it's the same with what you guys do, like, having your workouts, and it's building that relationship with yourself, showing yourself you can rely on yourself because you're going and you're working out even when you don't want to, and you're really prioritizing, what it is that you need, like whether that's to burn energy, whether that's to like, have the chance in the gym, like away from the rest of your life and just having a bit of a break for a while. It's still choosing yourself and like really developing that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Man,
gives
well
you
put.
a sense that you have a control over yourselves and then the outcome. I think that feeling of feeling secure and in control, I think is empowering to some degree.
Totally. Because we all need to feel that way. Because, you know, for people who do live in survival mode or who live in a state of stress, like you need to feel grounded and you need to feel stable in yourself to, you know, to kind of just move through life with ease,
Yep.
if that makes sense. When we live
Yeah.
in survival, we're just reacting all the time. When we live in a place of groundedness and stability, yeah, we have more of that control.
Yeah.
We're not reacting so much. We're actually choosing how we want to respond. And
Yep.
yeah.
Man, well said.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
powerful.
interesting.
That's powerful.
Yeah, we talked about, well, you covered anyway, not us, well-being, and in terms of mentors and seeking mentors and stuff. And one of the things you mentioned about a mentor is that or someone that you look up to is someone that seems to have a purpose in life. And I think that's one of the biggest, every time I think about well-being, especially mental well-being, I think about having a purpose. And I think if someone doesn't have a purpose in life or seems a little bit lost, then things tend to go downhill very quickly.
So true.
Apart from that, in terms of well-being in general, whether it's mental or physical, what does that mean for you exactly personally?
Having a purpose?
No, just well-being in general.
Oh, well-being.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, purpose is a huge part of it, for
Yeah.
sure. I think it's well-being for me feels like really acknowledging that myself as an individual has all these different parts that makes up who I am, and then living my life in a way that supports all those different parts. So it's not, you know, focusing purely on a few aspects and then disregarding everything else. It's kind of knowing that, you know, just as a human being, you know, I have different needs and I feel things and I have different interests, and, you know, there are people in my life who are important, and just acknowledging that, you know, life is complex and messy and busy, but if I can take the time to, you know, tend to all the different parts that make up who I am, you know, when I need to and when I can, overall, I feel really good in my life. You know, it's knowing that life isn't just about me, and, you know, it's also about friends and family and, you know, the world that we live in. It's about, yeah, kind of seeing things from that broader perspective, you know. Because I think, yeah, well-being, it's so complex again. It's like we have our individual well-being, but then there's the well-being of our communities and the well-being of our world, you know, how we all live together. So, you know, if there are challenging things happening in our families, for example, like our well-being
Of course.
as an individual is affected because, you know, that's hard to go through. You know, when there are big things happening in the world, it makes us stressed and anxious. And so it's really trying to tend to all the different parts of your life.
Yeah, it's finding that balance, isn't it? And like you
Yeah.
said, like social well-being or the people around you, if one's affected, that can affect you as well. So it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to purpose, I think purpose is a really important part of kind of individual well-being. And I think lots of us, you know, purpose is important because it's like that compass point. It's directing your life forwards in a way. And when we don't feel we have purpose, like you say, we get a bit lost and, you know, life feels a bit harder because we don't know what we're doing so much or where we're wanting to go to next. And I think purpose is something you don't sit down and think of it. You're not like, you know, brainstorming, what is my purpose? It's like when you reflect over your life and the different experiences that you've been through, that's where you find your purpose, because you start to make meaning from all those different things you've been through. And then you're like, wow, like I went through this because, you know, I needed to be the person I am today and to share my experience and like, you know, with other people. And that so often kind of turns into purpose, you know?
Yeah.
it's something that comes with time as well, isn't it? It's not something that you think about in your early 20s or teenage years, whereas what is my purpose? It's more about your status and trying to be with the popular kids or be this or that. And purpose is, as soon as you think purpose, mental health has to come into it, or mindfulness has to come into it. And that's why I think, for me personally, I think it took time for me to be like, what am I doing here? No, what am I here for?
Yeah.
And I think that changes with time too. It's like, I know the purpose I feel I have now, and that has very much inspired, teaching yoga, for example. But I know that, as my life changes again, like my purpose will change and expand. And, like when you have family, for example, like your purpose changes and so much of your purpose is to do with your kids and your relationships and, and then like they'll grow up and then you'll have more time and focus for other things. So your purpose changes again. And it's like, it's fluid, and I think we have to learn to accept, that life changes so much and, and sometimes we need to let go of needing to know what will happen and to feel in control because that's just how life is.
Yes, yeah. So a sense of purpose can change.
Yeah.
Constant,
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool. Yeah. It's not stagnating and you got to be fluid. And I like that whenever you're approaching life's challenges.
Yeah.
I think you have to be fluid. And when you look at individual well-being and social well-being, you simply have to be fluid because sometimes if your particular goals or objectives align with you individually but don't align with the close circle around you, then there could be problems.
Can I ask, like with you guys, when it comes to like cultural or community or family well-being, for example, how do you guys kind of deal with that, and like how does that affect your individual well-being? Because I know you guys come from two different cultural backgrounds and then you live in New Zealand and you work in an industry of health and well-being, I just find that so interesting how your culture and your family kind of affect that.
Yeah,
there are some similarities between Robin and I. So, I mean, Robin's got a Niuean background, and I'm more Middle Eastern,
but still based around So, funny enough, over the weekend, just had a good discussion with a Cook Island friend about this because, let's just say you go to a family member's house, you're going to eat. And it may as well be the biggest Fortuna buffet restaurant you can attend, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not eating, then it's seen as like disrespect. However, we're having a discussion about sometimes the cultural nuances that we go against, it shouldn't dictate our own personal health. So he went to his parents' place, like the whole family, and there was this all KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And him and his wife are health conscious. They got some goals going on. They didn't eat it at all. But that would be, culturally, you could say, is like disrespectful. However, he's trying to get like his health in order so he can play with his kids. So his purpose is be the best version of himself for his own little family. So like that goes against the grain. Or even like, let's just say, at the moment, like I drink, but at the moment I'm just not drinking. I've got some big goals to accomplish. So then even community-wise, like hanging out with different people, that has a huge effect on me because nobody will ask me, do you want to go out for a drink? Well, I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want to hang out at the gym? Even like my culture of like health and fitness, if you could say, even that's been affected. But yeah, in the cultural-wise for the like Pacifica side, around the food, that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
However, when we're talking about like your oldest, your sister being stubborn, I'm like that. I just don't. I don't get caught in it because it's for me, and if I do well, then my family will do well, and then hopefully, I could be someone that they want to aspire to and change that culture. Like maybe we meet up and we have healthy food instead of everything being like coconut cream, corned beef or something, you know what I mean? So like cultural wise, it's challenging. Or even like, some of the family members just want to catch up and drink. Well, no, I'm not going to. I'll come over and play cards with you, but, but then you can still get that external pressure. So
I think that's something so many people relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who really struggle in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're Pacifica or
Yeah.
Māori, and there's, the food and the
garage parties and all that.
Yeah, it's so hard.
But that's where it like comes back to the purpose we're just talking about is like, well, what do you actually want and what are you trying to gain? So for me, I think, is this going to add fuel on my journey? If not, this doesn't serve me well. And then if the people that really care about me don't understand, then do you actually care about me? So if you're going to oppose my decisions, then we're not even on the same page, like then I'll cut it. And I've done that heaps, like growing up. Some people that I was friends with, like when I was younger, going through my teens and 20s, realized that actually we're not the right fit. So then sometimes you just have to disconnect with those people that aren't going to help. And then funny enough, like, really good friends with Marvin, you meet people that's really going to help you and you stay on track. Yeah. So
true.
It's tough to find fight the culture, and Marvin's we've spoken about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, on my side of things, in terms of family is a big thing in pretty much every culture, but I think there's a huge emphasis in Middle Eastern culture, especially where I come from. My family comes from northern villages of Iraq, whereas smaller villages where everyone sort of knows everyone. So it's not just your instant family or immediate family, it's the uncles and cousins and aunties and stuff. And that's great because you've got a massive social circle and they're all supporting and they all want to rise together. But sometimes there's pressures with that as well, because there's how they measure mindfulness and health in general, or well-being of someone, is through particular milestones that you achieve in life, right? Whether it's you have to graduate from university. Once you graduate university by a certain age, you have to be married. Once you're married by a certain age, you have to have kids. And that's if you're falling short or you're feeling late on that, it could be an issue where there could be something, they think there's something wrong, and it's a sign that your well-being is not good. It's a part of it is well-being, and the other part of it is the status thing. Yeah. So it's kind of meshed together to create that. So great that you do have that massive circle, but sometimes there's unnecessary pressures from people around you that sometimes might lead you to feeling under pressure, or sometimes even though you've got a massive circle, you might feel like you don't have many people to talk to because everyone's got these milestones and, particular things like that. So there is that challenging aspect of it. But, family is a huge, huge thing. Like you eat with your family, you live with your family, especially in the northern Iraq villages. Sometimes they get married and they're in big households of 7-8 people, big houses and multiple families living in that house, Wow. So it's a different concept to what you see here in New Zealand. And I think there's positives and negatives on both sides, I feel like here sometimes you can be completely isolated, and you see that with mental health. It's probably, especially when COVID came, it was just made more vivid and highlighted more because circles are a lot smaller here. Not as many people talk to their parents, or they have those close relationships with their parents. So when problems strike, sometimes you feel like you're isolated, you're alone. But at the same time, you don't have those distractions sometimes when you're under the pump.
Yeah. I know there's always good and bad sides.
Yeah. I think with everything, right? Like
totally.
No one culture or no one person will ever get it right. All the time. It's just like, how well can you weave in and out of that balance to stay as true? I think to stay as true to yourself as possible. Like talking about the timelines for people to hit these time markers, I don't believe in it. Yeah. Because like some people will do things younger. Yep. Some people just do it when they're older. Yeah. It doesn't matter. That's it's right. Like it's true to yourself and how you want to do things. I think that's really, really important. Yeah. And that goes with like going back to like the health and the well-being. I think holistically that if I was governed by external prejudices of like what should be done, but it wasn't true to my core values of me being a spirit and well-being, then man, I think I'll just crumble, right? And I think that's where it's really important that people can stay strong and know exactly what they want for their health and well-being journey and stay on course.
Yeah.
And then get rid of all the noise.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Like you said, Namo, before, it does come down to the individual. It does come down to you to make that decision. And sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
It's difficult sometimes to do that, but sometimes you have to. There comes a time where you got to hold your ground. And like you said, Robin, sometimes you got to look into yourself and your purpose, because if you crumble, then the people you are looking after will be suffering as well.
Yeah.
So there is a balancing act, of course. Sometimes you got to give and lose some battles, but at the same time, you got to be stern at some points as well. It's a difficult juggle.
Yeah.
With everything, right? Like, you've got a career, busy, taking care of yourself, even like, take care of friends, stuff like that. Like all of that, you take consideration on a day-to-day basis. And then we're always tackling like quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when you're talking about the mindfulness component, when you're talking about yoga, it's like that resonates.
Yeah.
Like just that sort of, how long would a class be? Like 15 minutes, 60 minutes?
Yeah, about
Like,
an hour. Yeah.
where you are just there.
And
And then everything else can disappear.
Well, the thing is, though, it's like you're there, but your mind is always like getting busy again,
Yeah.
So it's like just as much, going in and being in a class for the practice. It's also really interesting just to observe how your mind becomes busy so quickly. It's like you'll be moving, you'll be practicing mindfulness. You might, be present for like a minute, and then all your thoughts will come back in, and then you'll refocus, and then like a bit more quiet, and then the mind will get busy again. And so you just kind of realize that the way your mind is, like, it's just naturally busy anyway, and you're never going to probably be in a class and just be peaceful and present the whole time, but it's like getting to know how your mind is working. So you just have that awareness, and you can check in with yourself more often during the day, when you're working, for example, and you are busy, and just being like, oh yeah, what's my mind doing? Like, am I focusing too much on stressful thoughts, or, what kind of beliefs or words am I using with myself today? And then you have that discernment to be like, what do I want to focus on now, rather than just letting your mind kind of run you.
Oh, so like a bit of like a self-governing mental check.
Yeah, that's how I like to think of it.
That's cool.
Oh, I like that. I like that how you raised about how you talk to yourself.
I think that's how I've always taught meditation, for example. I think lots of people are a bit unsure about meditation, and they think that, it's sitting quietly and it's to de-stress, and it does do that too. But I like to look at my meditation practice as, sitting and just, disconnecting from the outside world for a bit, but using it more as a place to observe my thoughts and to notice what are the dominant thoughts that come through. Does my mind tend to take me more to a place of like feeling stressed or anxious or worrying about something, or am I focusing more on like positive thoughts? Am I giving more of my thoughts to, my work or other people or myself? And then it's just like being able to see what your mind is doing, kind of knowing that, oh, yeah, this is kind of these are the thoughts that are driving my behavior at the moment. Like, and sometimes, we've got all these unconscious thoughts too, but just having an awareness of the conscious thoughts and seeing like what's running through my head, when I'm not aware of it, that's then influencing how I'm feeling and the choices I'm making, and, how I feel about myself, how I show up, is quite helpful. Yeah. And then I think it just gives you an understanding of if there is something there, if you have a, belief about yourself that's maybe more negative, when you've got that awareness of that belief and those thoughts, in your mind, then you have a place to then start thinking like, how can I change this? What do I need to do to shift this belief, or to maybe form a new pathway in my brain which overrides, that old pattern or that old way of thinking, which isn't actually good for me.
Yeah.
And that takes practice, I assume,
Totally,
in terms of meditation, because like yoga, we talked about yoga quite a bit, but now I'm glad you brought up meditation, because with meditation, there are misconceptions as well. And I still don't, I understand what it is. I understand the concept, but is there different types of meditation, or is there ways, like, does it have to be a quiet room that you go into? Is it a zone you get into, or could you meditate going for a walk, or what is it exactly?
You're going to get me into trouble. I feel like everyone has different ideas about meditation.
I think
what's your interpretation? Yeah.
I'm very broad. I feel like meditation is just that practice of, of presence.
Yeah.
Like meditation for me is always like presence in the moment. So you can definitely meditate when you're walking. I think just like walking and being really present in your experience again is like going to start getting you out of the thinking mind and just into the moment, which is that respite from your thoughts that you need. I do like to meditate in a quiet room. Like that works really well for me. But like I said, when I meditate, sometimes I like to just use that space to see what kind of thoughts are coming through my head. So yeah, that practice works for me then. Like there are so many different kinds of meditation and ways to meditate and different reasons why people turn to meditation. Like some people, I know lots of my friends, for example, who work in really high stress jobs, they have the meditating apps, and they just sit and they'll like do their meditation on their app for 5-10 minutes. And that's just a chance for them to like be quiet and to breathe.
Is that what the app, sorry, I cut you, but is that what the app, excuse my ignorance, but what does the app, what do you mean they sit and meditate for 5 minutes? Does it give you cues or to do?
Yeah, it's usually a guided meditation.
I
so
see.
You'll sit there and you'll have a voice just guide you through a process where they might get you to focus on your breathing and like breathe for a certain number of counts, and then they might, give you something to visualize, so it's guiding you through the process, which is a really great way to start meditating, I think, if you're new to meditation or you have a very busy mind.
Yeah.
Because your brain or your mind just needs something to focus on, and that gives that focus.
Gives you presence, I guess, when you're thinking.
Yeah.
I got two questions. First one is, do you have any app recommendations? There's not paid advertising, just to help people, even maybe help Marvin and myself. And second thing, is there any like 2 strategies you could give me and Marvin of how we could better meditate?
Okay.
Yeah. So
and you guys have like, what's your meditation experience?
So I do the gratitude and read my goals. That's as far as I go.
Yeah.
I would consider myself monkey brain. Are you similar? Like,
yep, I
just
run away with
crazy.
My thoughts. That's why I was just asking that question in terms of meditation, because when people ask me, do you meditate? I'm like, I don't sit in a silent room and sit down and meditate, so to speak. But sometimes when I go for a walk or something, I don't have a certain thought in my head. I'm just enjoying the fresh air or listening to the water of the ocean or something like that, or the birds or whatever it is. I'm just being
that sounds
present.
So good.
Or sometimes when I'm at the park and I've got a football with me, all I'm thinking about is that action of me kicking a ball. I don't know if that's meditation, and I might piss a lot of people off, and especially people like, but that's as far as I've gone in terms of meditation, in terms of being, like you said, being present. Because for me, how I see it is just, if you're present and you're not thinking about the past or the future, you're just thinking about then and there, and you're calm and you're not stressed. I find that as meditation, but yeah, obviously it could be completely off.
No, I totally agree with that.
Okay.
And I'd say, do you guys feel stressed? Like, I know we all feel stressed, but like just generally, what would you say your kind of main experience of your day is? Like, do you feel pretty good most of the time, or do you get into those deeper states of stress where you feel overwhelmed? Or
there are times, I think, but we're
not this year for me.
Yeah.
Previously, when I was finishing masters, I was a mess for 4 years. No, 5 years. 5 years masters and COVID.
And you didn't want to meditate during that time?
No, I should have.
Yeah.
But like, I get so busy and so occupied as a mechanism that, you know, if you're driving a really fast car and everything to the sides is just blurry and you stay focused, I'm like that, like
Robin's
all the
always
time.
been like that.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah.
But then, like, when Marvin was talking about, like, going for a walk and just, like, listening to waves, I'm like, man, that sounds like absolutely necessary for everyone. Like, that
Totally.
sort of...
And I think like people who reach for meditation, maybe that's a little harder for them. Like their minds are so busy that they find it really hard to be present. And purely it's probably just because we've lost the practice of presence, right? Because we're so busy, there's so much going on, so many things that we have to think about that the brain or your mind just gets used to like constantly thinking all the time. When it comes to apps, I actually haven't used many of the apps. I know some of my friends, oh gosh, no, that's terrible. I can't even remember the names of the apps that they use.
And so we might be better with your two strategies then. So first strategy would be mindful.
I think
So
that's the first
we could
step.
just do that in a quiet space, right? You could just do it at your room, or even what Marvin's doing, just go for a walk and then think about what, like, your stepping pattern or the scent of the
Totally.
flowers or
Listening.
sun coming down. Or
It's like tuning into your senses and just like letting your senses bring you into the moment. Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
it's like, what can you smell? What can you hear? What can you taste? What
Yep.
can you see? Like what can you feel on your skin?
Yep.
Like all of those things to ground you. And then I think your breath is always going to be a tool that your mind can focus on. So if I teach meditation, we always start by focused breathing. So if you need, more than just the inhale and the exhale, it's like inhale for a certain number of counts. So maybe inhale for 4 counts, hold your breath for 2 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold your breath for 2 counts. And it's just that process of like focusing on the full breath and then having the numbers to count is sometimes enough to find that space in your mind to like drop into a bit of quiet and, so I think, I'll always use the breath as a practice of mindfulness, I'd say.
Okay.
And then that, as well, like we were talking about before, is the process of talking to your nervous system through your breath and starting to just calm everything down. And, when you feel calmer, then it's a lot easier to maybe find a bit of quietness in your mind. And
It's one of those things I feel like with meditation, the people who need it most are the people who struggle to meditate, if you know what I mean. Like the busier the mind is, the more you need meditation, but the more they struggle to get to that.
Or maybe like the more triggered your nervous system is, because I think lots of people who have been through trauma, for example, and trauma is, trauma doesn't have to be something really big and awful. Lots of us experience trauma as children or, and if we don't kind of process that and move on from that, that keeps informing us in the moment. So, I think people who have been through, things that have caused trauma for them, if that hasn't been resolved, like you're more likely to be living in that stress response or that your survival mode without realizing it. And so because you're so triggered physically, your mind kind of reflects that too. If you're living in stress state, you're always looking for threats around you. You never quite feel settled, and so that all plays a part into maybe why you might need meditation, just to like bring yourself out of that state that you're living in without realizing.
Yeah.
Yep.
It reminds me of that pyramid. Who's done the pyramid where it starts with this
Maslow's
hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, I think if you're feeling, like you said, stressed or you're kind of fight or flight or safety is a big thing, or you're trying to protect, you can never get to the next stage. And the final stage, I think, of Maslow's is self-actualization, which he believes, I think, 3 to 4% of the population will ever experience self-actualization, which is incredible. But it's interesting. You say when you're struggling in the bottom of the pyramid, you can't get to that next stage and you can never reach that top level of complete peace within yourself.
Totally. And I think for so many people, those basic needs aren't met, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have enough money for food or to like pay your rent, or it's so hard to progress. And I think that's why, you know, I mean, we have to be compassionate towards people, first of all, but it's like, creating that foundation of safety is so important for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it reminds me, I'm originally from Iraq, and during my, you know, when I was in 4, 5, 6 years old, we were going through beginning of war and stuff like that, and we got away early, but just thinking about the development of those who stayed throughout that time, you can never kind of develop past that, because your first priority is
survival.
Survival and stay safe and making sure you got food tomorrow. So you can never really develop those next needs. So
let alone have like the headspace to create goals or to be grateful for something, right?
Yeah.
It's like you just live in that space of, will we have enough
for tomorrow or for today? So it's like you said, you need to think about those as well. So it's really interesting.
Wellbeing is so like there's so much to it, You could
all I
talk
know is
about
I need to meditate
Yeah.
from this conversation. So would you recommend just like maybe a little timer? Just like put a timer on your phone and just be like, boom, 3 minutes, like think.
For sure. I mean, for people who aren't used to meditating, 5-10 minutes, like just set a timer on your phone, sit, count your breath, be mindful, whatever your practice is, like just make it, you know, something that feels achievable for you at first, and then you can just start to increase it. And I mean, I'm quite bad with my meditation practice too, because I'm so busy as well, but like I'd like to do, 20 minutes. If I have the time, 20 minutes is like really good for me. But then throughout my day, I'll try to integrate those mindfulness practices too. Like if I'm walking somewhere, like I'll try to be present. This is so great because we're having a conversation and we have to be really present right now, Like it's not so easy to just like go off in your mind and think about something else. But like even those instances, like talking with a family member or cooking dinner, it's like those are little opportunities as well to practice that mindfulness if you haven't been able to be mindful during your day. And
oh my goodness, you sound like the marriage counselor. They call it assertive listening.
Really?
and I reckon they aim at every guy.
Oh my God.
Like
they don't look at the girl.
Shout out to Eric, my man. Because I remember him talking like assertive listening, and like, so let's just say I'm having a conversation with Jen. I do a quick summary of what she's told me to engage that I'm listening.
Women love that.
So that's the...
We love to know that you've been listening to us.
And you got to do all the gestures and the head nods with your little bit of summary. And that, I didn't realize I was actually meditating. I thought I was meditating when I switch off. But that actually does make sense when you're holding a conversation with someone, that it is just whoever's there. But this is where I find we've been to multiple restaurants before, the family outing, and people on their phones and devices. And I find that a huge like disconnect if we're talking about like well-being as a social entity as well. Like you can't connect with people. And I reckon that's also leading to a lot of issues that we're starting to see for a lot of people. Like you can't be on your phone, connect with somebody, whatever that looks like for someone, and be on the device at the same time. I think it's such a huge barrier. And I reckon that could spiral people's like mental and health, like well-being.
So for you as a dad, and you've got daughters who are at that age where they probably want to be on phones, and like what do you do to kind of maybe prevent that sort of thing?
Oh, we play board games.
Oh, cool.
Well, very active. Like they got swimming, jiu-jitsu, like piano, singing lessons. We play board games, go for bike rides. So like we have to be active with them as well. Yeah, they do device time. Like, but yeah, it's just like, trying to keep them engaged and even hang out with their friends. Like just go outside, go do stuff. And that seems to work really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. I think when they were here, when we were setting up this whole podcast thing, they weren't on their phones. They were just pretending to be podcasting to each other and talking and joking around and stuff. So
Cute.
yeah, I don't think they feel like they need to be on their phones or iPads or whatever.
Do you guys find yourselves that you have a good relationship with your phones and like social media and stuff, or do you find...
we're the worst.
Yeah, we're bad.
Me and Marvin, we could leave our phone, like we could leave our phone somewhere and like go away. Like we are the worst in terms of the best at not letting the phone be so integrated into our life.
Yeah.
Like we're very good at it.
But I can see how we can fall into that sometimes as well, especially for L&T, for example. We got to do a little bit of marketing and things like that, and be familiar with social media. We're almost forced to use that those platforms to post things and information and stuff. And a lot of the times we're there, and it could be part of work that we're doing that, but you also get distracted and you get carried away. And I've fallen into that trap as well. So it's not a big part of our job. I can imagine for others that might be a huge part of their job, or just even having an office job, you've got it right there at your disposal, and then you can use it. In terms of our physiotherapy and clinic hours, the phone is almost untouched, by the time 6 p.m. strikes, I look at my phone, it's fully charged, we hardly touch it. But yeah, if you've got a job, an office job and stuff, I can see you can get distracted with it, and I can see how it can be an issue.
I've also noticed, like with friends of mine who maybe work in jobs or industries that they don't actually enjoy. I feel like you guys really enjoy what you do and like get a lot of like purpose and energy from it. But lots of my friends who work in jobs that they don't like, they have really bad relationships with their phones, and like they turn to their phones as like their comfort or their distraction. And so it's really hard for them. They've got like an addiction, to their phones because they don't feel happy in their work lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mock people that like if me and Marvin are going to be treating people, right, and they're in the reception area, like I'll intentionally mock them and be like, hey, you need some building stuff done. He's a builder. If you guys actually spoke, you'd find out. Like, like network. And so like I will force people to talk, and then they realize, oh man, got some stuff in common. It changed the energy of the place. People are laughing a little bit more. And I feel like where we're heading is like that is starting to be missed, like that disconnect. And I reckon that eventually a university paper will be how to network, how to talk to people.
I think it already has started.
Yeah, they'll probably teach it at high school. Like, that's why, like, I think it's very important for parents to be able to take their kids and like take them to wherever with their friends and like bring them into a conversation so they realize what's actually happening else. So end up being quite socially awkward.
I think that's why I was curious about your daughters, for example, because I know, again, like just going back to thinking when I was a teenage girl and just how influenced I was by what I would consume. And that was before the time of social media. And like these days, you hear all these stories of like parents with their teenagers and they're addicted to their phones and they're just always on Snapchat or Instagram and, reading, they can just access everything, and so they're consuming all this stuff and they're losing the ability to, maybe connect or, in real life. I was just curious, like how can parents combat that, because that'll play a huge part to mental well-being and all kinds of well-being really in the future.
Well, that's where I think, like, let's just say if you think about the community you've built with your yoga, that's huge. Even if parents like start to take their teenagers to a yoga class and then they start to meet other people, you realize, man, the device it's not necessary. And even I'll take the girls to work and they hang out with Marvin and mock and laugh and, that sort of stuff. Or when we go to jiu-jitsu training, like I really feel like group training environments is going to help a lot of people like get out of it. So I suggest if you're a young person and you do have access to it, like be part of a sports team.
I think it's
move your
a
body.
huge teacher. to sports or any social environment, especially sports, it's a huge teacher, because one, not only it will keep you out of trouble in those times, but also it teaches so much about how to deal with people and how to work as a team, even though some people might be very different to you. I think that's huge. And it also can teach quite a lot of stuff about leadership and how to work with your way around when things aren't going well, or work your way around when things are going good, you know? So I think it's massive for youngsters. It was huge for me, and I didn't notice that. You know, I've been playing football all my life, and you don't notice that until you're a bit older, and you're like, wow, you know, I think I got that from there, or I got that from here and there. And
agreed.
It's a big teacher. It's huge.
Yeah.
We talked about, you mentioned, we're going back into meditation. I can't remember where I read it or what book it was in terms of senses, because you mentioned senses. Breathing is a huge thing, but I think senses, when I heard it from that book, and you just reiterated that, I feel like it's such a valuable thing to make you present. And that book mentioned, you know, if you see a bird or you hear a sound and stuff, just try to pay attention to the intricate details of that bird. Like, you know, and just really think about it, or think about the ocean and think about how is that sound? What is it? What's the beginning of the sound? What's the end of it like? Instead of just thinking there's waves. Yeah. You know, there's so much details to a wave when you really listen to it. Or there's so much details to a tui if you look at a tui or listen to a tui. And breaking that down, you kind of, it's like opens up a new world, and all of a sudden you're lost in it, but you're lost in the present as well, because you're there, which I found like it was an eye opener for me. And when I found that out, I was like, wow, like that's huge.
Was it the pink noise you were talking about with waves? The pink noise?
We covered it in a podcast before. Pink noise of the ocean.
Pink noise,
yeah, with like the wave as it comes in, but then once the wave's leaving, you can hear like the bubbles, like the small bubbles of the wave. And it's just like, then all of a sudden there's a whole world. You're like studying waves. But yeah, I think you can, like in terms of mindfulness and being present, the breath is huge because it forces you, especially when you kind of coordinate your numbers and stuff, try to control your breathing. But I think senses is a cool one.
I love that you said that, because a lot of the time, like, I feel like an idiot, because I'm that person who is just like big-eyed, like looking at everything. Like a lot of the time, like I'll be sitting in our lounge and we have these colorful birds that fly into our garden every day, like those like parrot-looking ones.
I know the ones, yeah.
And like I will just sit and I'll watch them and I'll like, look at all the colors and like just all the detail. Like I'm that person.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel better about myself. Like,
and then some people don't. Like I discuss this, tell this to my wife, Ellie, and she can't do it. You know, she's always thinking about something else, and she works differently to me. And I'm like, look at that, look at that tree. Sometimes we were in,
so
I think
beautiful.
we were in One Tree Hill. There was one tree with like the branches were all exposed and it looked like an artwork. And I was like, wow, let's ponder this for a second. And then she's just like, man, I'm not interested
But
at
like
all.
you say, everyone will have that with the thing that they resonate with, right?
Yeah.
So like for me, I'm very visual. So I love to like look at everything and I love to hear stuff too. And then my partner's a musician. So for him, it's like the music, like that is his thing. Like he can get lost in the music and all the different sounds and the different tones of the instruments. And, for him, that's probably his meditation, you know? So it's like we all have the different things that really draw us in and like give us that experience. Let us go a little deeper with that than what we would with other things, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing you mentioned with music. My brother's a musician as well. And sometimes we used to listen to a song and he's like, whoa. And he'd just play it back to a part. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, listen to the cello there. Did you hear it? I'm like, what?
You're like, I didn't hear it.
It's a repetitive beat. What are you on about?
Just be like,
yeah. But
right
then
there.
He's right. When you pay attention to it, because I hung out with a lot of his musician buddies. Sometimes they'd be in the garage practicing and stuff, and they'd get mind blown by a particular piece, and it could be like a 8-second piece of a part of a song, and they replay it, and they're like, wow. But when you listen to it, you're like, wow, that's I don't hear it the same. I have the different ear to them, but you do tend to appreciate it a bit more. And you're
That's
like,
cool.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Michael Jackson was really good at doing, right? He could hear like a micro timing out. And he was getting everybody set up. Yeah, a part of a
Really?
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be like, no. And he'd be like, no, timing, boom, bang on. And I'd re-listen to it. I was like, what timing?
Sounds
Like,
the
it sounds exactly the same. But yeah, he could hear it. So,
So
I think that's a cool musical thing, or when they think about,
It's a gift.
it's a gift, yeah, when they
Yeah.
can see, the wavelengths in color, or they see shapes. I'm like, man, that's a different IQ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So different forms of meditation.
Yeah. That's cool. I just wrote down practicing mindfulness. Your stepping pattern as well is an interesting one. Your breathing pattern's important, and as well as the senses.
Yeah.
I think those are
Yeah. They're all just little things to ground you.
to help you be present.
Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of, for the listeners out there, and for whoever's interested to reach out, because as it sounds like you teach yoga from different areas all around Auckland. What's the best way to reach out in terms of a plug?
Oh, time for my hand up. I don't even have a website, so I just use Instagram. My Instagram is Simply Live Well Yoga.
Simply Live Well Yoga.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there's an interesting story to Simply Live Well Yoga. How did that start?
Oh, yeah. I started this Instagram account during the first ever COVID lockdown. So I had moved to Sydney, COVID happened, I found myself living back in Auckland. I came back the day before lockdown, and then I was doing that first 6 weeks totally alone in an apartment. And I kind of was like, firstly, how am I going to get through this lockdown alone? But it made me really think there will be so many people out there who might struggle with this, like with isolation, or maybe even just having to stay inside with family and not, have that connection to the outside world. So I created this Instagram account, and I just started teaching like free meditation and free yoga every day, kind of morning and evening from this account. And it just really resonated with people. Like, I'd do live classes and post things and just, I guess, write stuff that was really real for me, and people would get it and kind of relate. So yeah, that was kind of how I started this Instagram platform. And then when the doors opened and we could go back out into the world again, I just kept that name. So
Simply
Nice.
Live Well Yoga.
Simply Live Well. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's cool.
So people will be able to message you, find out where you'll be instructing.
Yeah.
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 Excellent.
Yeah, all through there. I have to keep it simple. I'm so bad with having multiple things going on. Like, I'd never be able to keep on top of a website and an email and an Instagram and a WhatsApp. And so I just have to keep it simple for my own sanity.
It's so much better. So much better that way,
Yeah.
I think. I've got clients who love WhatsApp, and then clients who love Instagram and whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just lost in it, and you're like, oh my God, 2 weeks ago, this person said something here, I didn't reply.
Yeah.
So it's nice just to funnel it all into one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll keep it underneath the video if you guys want to have a look and learn some more about meditation, yoga, and everything
Yeah.
to do with
So
that.
we'll do a class. I reckon we should record.
We will
we'll
do.
do
Stay
it.
tuned.
Let's do a class.
The
Yeah.
reformer.
A reformer class.
Oh,
Maybe some yoga
Yeah.
meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think yoga would be great as well. I think
Yeah.
I'll definitely want to try yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with that, because then I think what we've talked about today,
Yeah.
that just relates to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See how you
Yeah.
guys go.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I've covered most of my questions I've got to ask. I don't know, Namo, if you've got anything else you want to talk about or cover, or Robin, if you've got any burning questions.
No, I got what I personally needed as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully it answers
Yeah.
for a lot
I feel
of other
like we've
people.
had a really good chat. Like, we've kind of touched on lots of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think thank you so much for making the time. to
appreciate
come
it.
here.
Thank you,
I think,
guys. It's
so
been
good.
fun.
yeah, in terms of me personally, I've learned so much about yoga, and I've got a different outlook on it as well, especially on the mindfulness part and the being present, and the same with meditation. And I think we talked a lot about mental health as well, different backgrounds, and the importance of your individual well-being as opposed to social well-being as well, and how that's all integrated and kind of meshed together and coalesces. So thank you so much for
sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, sharing your knowledge
Yeah.
to us, and hopefully the listeners enjoyed that just as much as we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I've had a
Awesome.
great time.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Are you trying to make this a challenge? Holy hiccup.